Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gary with another Fan TV back at you with a video at the content. This video, go smash that like button at the content of this channel. Go and subscribe, man. Look, so definitely some Ravens news to get to today. Talk a little bit about Derrick Henry's contract, and then we're mainly gonna talk about the schedule release, right? So, and my thoughts and takeaways from that. All right, so start with Derrick Henry's contract, right? So with Derrick Henry, 2-year deal, $30 million, $25 million guaranteed for the guy that had almost 2,000 yards rushing last year, well over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. Had probably, one of the best seasons of his career, if not the best season of his career with the Ravens at age 30, right? So this was an extension that everybody saw coming. It's expected, it's deserved. Derrick Henry proved me wrong. I don't know how else to say it for me personally, I thought the Ravens needed a different kind of running back. There's still certain ways that, I think the Ravens can have different skill sets back there, but as far as overall player, Derrick Henry was amazing last year, right? You can't take anything away from that. I'm glad he's on the team for another 2 years. He'll probably would end up retiring as a Baltimore Raven, right? So that's good news. I'm glad that they got the deal done. As far as other possible extensions this offseason, the Costa brought up, extending Lamar just because his cap hit is going to be really high, and obviously Josh Allen just got paid, so it's time for Lamar to get paid again. Linderbaum, they didn't pick up his 5th-year option because the 5th-year option for offensive lineman was too high, particularly for a center. So, it's some other things that can happen, but the Ravens get Derrick Henry locked up, extended. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, right? So, I'm happy that the Ravens start running back next year. Ravens have to worry about that position. He's an Iron Man. Derrick Henry, you can't really ask for too much more than what he provided for what the Ravens did last year. All right, so it's good to have him back. Well, he was going to be anyway. It was good to have him extended for an extended period of time. He's going to be here anyway, but for an extended period of time. But anyway, all right, let's talk about the schedule release, man. The Ravens did the schedule release, right? They did the whole Severance theme video. I watched Severance, so I did enjoy the schedule release. But let's talk about the actual schedule and the games and things like that, right? So and how they line up on said schedule. All right, so the Ravens got 4 primetime games. Okay, they got 4 primetime games. One of those games include a Thursday night Thanksgiving showdown with Cincinnati Bengals, right? So the Ravens do not play on Christmas this year. The Ravens, the NFL decided to give them another national TV game on a holiday, and that's Thanksgiving, right? Which is okay, right? It's at home, so the players I think they're going to be happy about that. They're not going to be on the road for Christmas like they have been the last couple of seasons. So I think the players are happy about that. I know last year the Ravens said that they were going to put in a request to the NFL to not play on Christmas at all, right? So the NFL abided by the request, and here we are now, right? So that's cool. I would say this: the first 6 weeks are very, very tough, very, very tough for the Ravens, right? So it goes Bills, Browns, Lions, Chiefs, Texans, Rams, 5 out of 6 playoff teams, and 1 division game, right? So very, very tough schedule. Now let's talk about the Bills week 1. I don't want to hear any talk because it already started with Roquan Smith, right? Roquan Smith's already doing this. Maybe for the players it's different, but I don't want to hear any talk about revenge games. I don't want to hear any talk about we're going to get it back for last year. It's impossible. The Bills beat us in the playoffs. There is no revenge to be had. This is week 1 of the 2025-2026 season. It's a new season. Nothing else matters. Just like last season when there was we played the Chiefs. There was no revenge for the Chiefs, right? Ravens lose that game, right? So there was no revenge for the Chiefs. Okay? So if the Ravens start the season 1-0 on 1, just like last year, there is no revenge. It's just a new season, new beginnings. We're here to start fresh. We're gonna hit the road on the hopefully on the road to a Super Bowl this year, right? All right. I don't want people to get too hyped up about week 1. I really don't, right? You know what I mean? Like if we think about it, just because the Ravens lost to the Chiefs last year, week 1, that didn't tell us where the season was heading. It didn't. All right. Ravens end up turning the season around and start off 0-2 and end up catching fire. That's what's going to happen, right? So as far as week 1 versus the Bills, we want the Ravens to win. Obviously, I hope they win. They have a good chance of winning. I still believe the Ravens are a better team than the Bills. They were last year. I think they'll be a better team this year. Okay. But if they don't win the game, it does not matter, right? It's week 1. All right. So it's week 1. All right. Now, bye week, week 7 bye week. To me, that is very, very early. All right, very very early. Ravens seem like late. The Ravens kind of had later bye weeks. I know last week. I mean not last week. Last year was really late in the season, right? But week seven is kind of early. So we'll see how the players adjust to that, right? You know, the Ravens have had the Ravens injury issues have toned down a lot over these last couple of years. You know, since they transition to a new you know, training staff and things like that. So that's really going to be tested this season, right? When you get a bye week, and what I would say is, you know, is even before the first half of the year is even over with, right? Um, you're going to be playing a lot of games on the back end, a lot of games on the back end, right? So the Ravens and the medical team, the recovery, all that's going to have to be excellent this season. You know, hopefully the players don't break down. You know, it's a very, very real possibility because the Ravens are playing a very, very top-notch, tough schedule. You know, I counted 7 playoff teams on the schedule. You got some up-and-coming teams like the Bears. Who else? You know, the Dolphins. See if they turn around this year, but you know, there really isn't and you know the Jets as well, right? There really isn't a easy quote unquote stretch of the schedule or a game on the schedule. We're being quite honest, right? To me, like the Rays have a tough schedule. I mean, that's just my honest opinion of it, right? And then they do this the weird thing with the schedule that I don't like personally is where they backload all your division games, and then they do this thing where you play the same team twice in 3 weeks, right? So we're talking about from weeks 10 to 18, the Ravens are going to play 5 out of their 6 division games in those like what 9 weeks. So that's going to be a slew of division games. Then if we talk about weeks 13 and 15, they're going to play the Bengals twice. So 13 Bengals, I believe 14 is the Steelers, then 15 the Bengals again. I don't really like when the NFL does that's just not my cup of tea. I don't like when you get it back and forth, right? And then on top of that, say the Bengals make the playoffs, then you're gonna be playing them again, right? It's just like back to back to back to back. It's just a preference thing. It doesn't really mean anything, but yeah, I don't like that. I like to have the division games more spread out throughout the schedule. But the NFL has been doing this lately so that when it comes down to the end of the season, that division race is really tight, and those division games at the end of the year are going to mean more, right? You know, instead of having them in the front of the schedule or kind of more spread out, have them at the end so that you know it means more, right? So, and that then once again we're ending our season versus the Pittsburgh Steelers once again. That's something that's happened, you know, quite often, right? You know, whether it's kind of like it's been like the Browns, Steelers, who we end the season with, right? So that's happening again. Okay, so for the Ravens schedule, it's going to be a difficult one. I mean, you know, it is kind of is what it is, right? But for the Ravens, I don't really get worried about regular season games, right? You know, we've had this conversation for you know many years at this point now. That the regular season games, I'm not too worried about. The Ravens are going to win I would say the floor. The floor is 11 games, and the ceiling is always up to 14, 15 games, right? That's what the Ravens are going to do, right? If I had to give my prediction for what the Ravens do right now, I haven't really gone through really counted win loss, win loss, win loss. Um, I feel comfortable with 12, 13 wins right now. That's what I feel comfortable with, right? Given the tough schedule, everything like that. If they come out the first 6 games of the season, let's see. Because I look at these first 6 games of the year, right? They should beat the Texans. They should beat the Rams. They should beat the Browns. That's 3 wins. Bills, Chiefs, Lions. In my opinion, they should beat the Lions. That's 4 wins. And then, I mean, the Bills and Buffalo is going to be tough, but the Ravens should win that game. I'm just gonna be quite honest with you. So, if the Ravens had come out the first 6 weeks of the season 5-1, say they only lost to the Chiefs, or they beat the Chiefs and only lost to the Bills, I see it as a entirely possible situation, right? Or if they come out 4-2, completely fine with that as well, right? So, for me, the Ravens, I see 12, 13 wins on the schedule, and that could be enough to win the AFC North once again. You know, it's barring that the Bengals will have an incredible season, something like that. So when I look at the schedule, it's kind of the same thing we say every year. Ravens are going to have a tough opening to the year. They're going to have to really be ready to play. But the Ravens are always going to perform versus games. I don't really have any nervousness about it, right? You know, when it gets to the playoffs, we'll see what happens, right? I think for the Ravens, the most important thing is it's always keeping the main thing, which is first off, you want to win your division, and then if you can, try to secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs. All right, you can play the game in Baltimore on your own terms. All right, so to me, that's the most important things going into the season. Um, so yeah, man, you know, give me your thoughts on the schedule. That's my thoughts on it. It has a tough schedule, but the Ravens are going to do what the Ravens do in the regular season, right? They're going to win 11 to 13 games this year. I feel pretty confident in saying that, right? Barring any major injuries. Major injuries happen, then there's nothing you can do about that, right? But barring any major injuries, 11 to 13 wins, pencil it in. A couple of tough breaks in the schedule. There's one stretch where they play 3 straight home games and they play like 3 straight away games. So it's a little bit of a back and forth with that. Then they end the season like 2 games on the road. So it's a little bit of back and forth with that. Kind of little schedule quirks with that, but nothing too major in my opinion, right? So the Ravens should have a good year, right? So that's my thoughts on it. Give me your thoughts on the schedule breakdown or the schedule release. Let me know anything that jumped out to you, right? But it's Gabriel, just other fan TV. I'm out.